There are places in the mountains where silence doesn't mean peace. It means no one is coming. For most people, the cold is something to be avoided. But for Lena Merrill, it was something sacred. She had a deep, quiet love for winter, its emptiness, its precision, its stillness. At 25, she had already become something of a minimalist explorer, not in the influencer sense, not in the flashy YouTube thumbnails and drone shots. Her style was simpler, a snow-worn backpack, an old Canon camera she'd bought second-hand, and solo trips into whatever place she thought the quiet would feel sharpest. In December 2018, she set out again. No fanfare, no dramatic goodbye, just a single text to her older sister, Rachel. Going quiet for a few days. Don't worry if I don't reply. I'll be back by Sunday. Sunday came and went. So did Monday. Then Tuesday. By the time her sister reported her missing, it had been 4 full days since anyone had seen or heard from Lena. Local authorities traced the GPS on her phone to an area near Arrowhead Ridge, a remote high-altitude zone in northern Utah known for its unpredictable snowfall and dozens of frozen lakes. Her car was found at a trailhead in the Lower Basin parking lot, parked neatly, nothing broken, nothing dramatic. Her gloves were still in the passenger seat. Inside the car, there was a note in her field journal that simply read, "Quietest place I've ever heard." No one knew what trail she had taken. There were at least 5 that branched off in different directions from where she parked. All of them led into snow. The local search and rescue team mounted an immediate effort. Helicopters scanned the area for thermal traces, but a snowstorm had moved in the day before. Dogs were brought in, boots hit the ground. For 4 days they combed frozen forests and high alpine ridges. But there was nothing. No boot prints, no gear, no bros. Ken branches, no trail markers disturbed, as if she had stepped into the trees and vanished. Lena wasn't a reckless person. Her friends described her as methodical, introspective, maybe even overly cautious at times. She didn't take unnecessary risks. She kept laminated trail maps in her gear bag. She logged her routes. She texted waypoints to her sister on other hikes. Which is what made this disappearance so odd. She was alone, yes, but she had always been alone. That was her thing. One of the few things recovered in the initial search was her GoPro case. It was found lying beside a frozen stream, still zipped shut. The camera wasn't in it. At first, rescuers thought maybe she'd fallen into the stream and been carried under the ice. But the current was too shallow, the ice too thick. They brought in sonar. Nothing. Every few weeks, someone from the county would follow a new lead. Someone said they saw her hitchhiking out of town. Another claimed she had staged her disappearance as a protest against environmental damage. A hiker swore they saw footprints vanishing off a ridge. Each theory collapsed as quickly as it formed. Her family kept her case alive, posting her photos, organizing hikes, talking to journalists, standing quietly at public meetings. But with each passing month, the calls grew fewer, the searches slower, and the winter that once called to her fell silent. In a blog Lena kept, private, never shared on social media, she once wrote, "The most honest feeling I've ever had is standing in falling snow where no one else exists, just me and the cold, and it doesn't care whether I make it out or not." Her sister Rachel found the blog after her disappearance. She couldn't read more than 3 entries. It felt too much like a goodbye she never saw coming. When the first year passed, her family held a private vigil by the lake. When the second pa said only her mother came, and when the third winter came, it was colder than any before. The ground froze deeper, the lake cracked with pressure ridges, and on one of those days, a ranger, new to the area, took a patrol snowmobile toward a side trail no longer marked on park maps. The trail hadn't been cleared in over a decade. He didn't know the story, didn't know her name, didn't know what had happened 3 years ago. But as he stood near a remote inlet of the lake, watching the thin sunlight scatter across the fractured ice, he saw something, a dark shape beneath the surface. Still, long, unmoving. The ranger didn't touch the ice. He just stood there for a moment, blinking against the pale sunlight. The cold had that sharp kind of quiet to it, the kind that settles behind your ears and keeps everything still. His snowmobile hummed softly behind him, its tracks half swallowed by last night's snowfall. At first he thought it was just a log, maybe something buried in silt, some branch from the previous spring, but then the angle shifted slightly in the light, and what he thought was wood wasn't. It was hair, dark, fanned slightly out, frozen into place under the surface. He didn't panic. He didn't radio it in right away. He crouched beside the ice and studied it again. Not moving, not pressing close, just looking. Like something in him already knew this moment was larger than whatever job title he carried. Then he slowly stepped back, pulled out his radio, and called dispatch. "I need a team. I think I've got something frozen beneath Echo Lake." By dusk, the entire area was sealed. Search Rescue, County Sheriff. A small black SUV from the State Forensic Unit. No press? Not yet. That came later. They didn't pull the body out that night. The temperature was dropping too quickly, and the surface was already beginning to refreeze. But photos were taken, samples collected. It was a woman, fully clothed, fetal position, hands drawn slightly toward her chest, hair still fanned around her like dark threads embedded in glass. She looked, yet untouched, preserved by time, like she'd only just gone under. Only her clothes betrayed the truth, wind-worn, frayed at the sleeves, caked in tiny ice grains. When they finally brought her out the next morning, they confirmed what some already suspected: Lina Merrill. 3 years after she vanished, she had been lying less than 2 miles from her car, frozen under less than 8 inches of ice. It was the kind of moment that makes time fold. Her mother dropped the mug in her hand when the deputy knocked on the door. Her sister didn't cry at first. She just stared out the window as though she might see the lake from there, from across the state. The coroner said there were no signs of trauma, no broken bones, no bruises, no indications of attack or self-harm. They guessed she fell through thin ice, that she panicked, couldn't find her footing, and was sealed in as temperatures plunged. But there were things that didn't add up. Her coat zipper was undone, not broken, just open. There was no water in her lungs, and more than anything else, her backpack was zipped shut. Still on her back, still dry, still holding her journal and her phone. Forensic techs worked around the clock to recover data from her iPhone. Water damage made things slow, unstable, but pieces emerged. The final photo on her phone was taken at 3:42 p.m., December 13, 2018. It showed the lake. Bare trees in the distance, sunlight coming in at an angle, nothing unusual. But in the burst files before it, in one frame, just one, a dark shape appears between the trees. Blurry, off-center, almost hidden. A silhouette. Human height, standing very still. No other images show it. Nothing in front, nothing behind. Just that one. Just watching. Her phone also had 4 unsent voice memos, recorded on the same day. 2 were short, 4 seconds, 11 seconds. Wind and breathing. The third, it was longer. "There's something. I think someone's behind me. I saw a person. I can't tell if it's a hiker or... I don't know. I'm probably being stupid." Laugh. "Whatever. I just want to make it to the lake before sundown. It's quiet here. Weird quiet." Pause. "If I don't make it back, tell Rachel I made it. This is the quietest place I've ever heard." She didn't sound afraid. Not really. More like she was trying to convince herself not to be. The last memo was 6 seconds long. It was recorded just over an hour after the one before. The only sound was her breathing, and a single word, spoken low, shaky, almost like a whisper. "Run." Then the recording cut off. When investigators reviewed her case, they tried to place blame where it usually lands. They asked why she didn't carry a GPS beacon, why she was out there alone, why she went off trail. But Lina's sister had an answer for all of it. That's how she found peace. The only thing that didn't make sense was why she never came back. The autopsy confirmed what everyone already knew. Lina had died of hypothermia. But it didn't explain why she wasn't found sooner. Why, in all the searches and drones and dog teams and interviews, no one had ever spotted her, not even a glove, or boot print, or broken branch. And that was what kept her case from closing, because while some people accepted the explanation, she got lost, she froze, others couldn't stop circling back to the small, quiet details. Things that didn't scream, but whispered just loud enough. Like how the lake where she was found had been fully searched in 2019. Sonar had been used, divers brought in. Nothing was found, not even the bag. And yet here she was, exactly in that spot, under shallow ice, lying still like she had been placed there carefully, not crashed through it. There were no signs of broken ice around her, no fracture patterns that suggested someone had fallen in. And the strangest thing? The bike tracks. 2 days before the ranger reported her body, a snowmobile patrol had passed through. The same area. The trail cam logs proved it, time-stamped, GPS tagged. That patrol had crossed directly over the lake, and there was nothing in the ice. No shadow, no shape, no dark patch beneath the surface. It wasn't until a freak warm spell hit the region and caused a brief melt that the ranger saw the form below, which begged the question, had she always been there, or had she been moved? Lena's backpack was returned to her family, along with her journal. It had remained sealed shut in a Ziploc lining, standard for her. She wrote small, sharp, like someone always saving space. The last dated entry was from the night before she vanished. December 12th, 2018. Camp is quiet. I set up on a ridge overlooking the frozen inlet. It's still, no wind tonight. I can hear branches crack under their own weight. I saw a shape earlier. Thought it might be a deer, but it didn't move like one. I'm probably tired. Going to bed soon. It's beautiful here. Like time holds its breath. After that, a blank page. Then another. Then a single note scribbled crooked across the bottom of the next. This doesn't feel right. Nothing else. The more her family read, the more something settled in that no one wanted to say out loud. That maybe she wasn't alone out there. Maybe someone had followed her. Maybe someone had known where she camped. Maybe, worst of all, someone had moved her body after the search ended. But who? There were no other reported hikers in that region, no signs of camps, no boot prints. Even hunters rarely went that deep. And yet, that photo on her phone, that blurred figure in the trees, it didn't go away. The sheriff's department reopened the case, not officially, but quietly. 2 deputies were assigned to review the original 2018 report, compare it with the new findings, and follow up on anything that hadn't been fully explored. They went back to the trailhead. Lena's car had long since been released to the family, but maps were still stored in the station files. They retraced her route, not on snowmobiles, on foot. And 5 miles past the lake, in a side ravine barely wide enough for a deer to squeeze through, they found something strange, a single campsite, abandoned. Canvas tarp, weathered rope, and under a pile of stones, a half-rusted cooking pan still holding frozen ash. They tested the fire pit. Carbon dated the burn layer. It matched winter 2018. They also found shoe prints in hardened soil beneath the snow. Not recent, long pressed, preserved by the freeze-thaw cycles. Men's size, not Lena's. And when they examined trees nearby, they found deep vertical cuts, the kind used for marking trail paths, but not from a park ranger, not from any official maintenance. Someone had been living out there, someone who never came forward. Someone who might have seen her, or worse. They brought in a survivalist expert from the state. He'd spent decades studying off-grid campsites, old hermit shelters, and illegal poaching shacks. He examined the area and nodded slowly. This isn't a hiker. This is someone who's been living here a while, knows how to stay invisible, probably followed her for days before she even noticed. That night, Rachel sat with the detective leading the review and asked the question no one had yet. If someone was out there, and they found her after the search failed, why would they move her back? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the photo, the one of her under the ice, and said, maybe to be found. The story didn't break in the press right away. There were whispers, Of course. A cold case reopened. A woman found intact beneath the ice. But it wasn't until a local journalist from a regional news blog filed a FOIA request that Lena's case hit national headlines. The headline read, "Vanished solo hiker found 3 years later. Was she being watched?" And then it was everywhere. News sites posted old photos of Lena, one of her laughing at a lake, another standing with a backpack at the edge of a cliff, the kind of curated stillness that didn't match what had been found. Reporters called it a tragic mystery. Reddit threads speculated about wild men, off-grid murderers, or ancient local legends. TikTokers romanticized it with haunting voiceovers and drone-shot simulations. But beneath all that noise, something else had shifted. Because what they didn't publish, what was never supposed to be public, was the second image on her phone. The one after the lake. It wasn't a clear photo, just the kind taken mid-step, blurred, crooked, dark in the corners. But if you adjusted the contrast, brought up the shadows, there was a figure behind her, much closer than in the previous photo. Still mostly hidden, but this time the shape was unmistakably facing her. It wasn't proof, not legally, but emotionally. It hit like a gut punch. And the people who had once thought Lena had simply wandered too far started to ask different questions. Rachel kept the original image, refused to let anyone clean it up or enhance it further. She said the truth wasn't in the pixels, it was in the distance between them. He wasn't trying to be seen, she told the investigator. He was trying not to be. It wasn't just a hunch anymore, it felt like knowledge, a quiet, horrible knowledge. Someone had been following her. Maybe not all the way, maybe not from the trailhead. But somewhere along the way, Lena had crossed paths with a man who had no reason to be there, and no reason to let her go. The timeline became its own mystery. If she recorded the last voice memo at 4:50 p.m., and sunset was at 4:58, that gave just 8 minutes of daylight after she whispered, "Run." 8 minutes to decide whether to camp or keep going. 8 minutes to find safety or lose it. Whatever happened in that gap, no one could say for sure. But forensic experts analyzing her injuries noted something subtle. She had small abrasions on both palms, not consistent with falling, but with gripping something rough, like bark or stone, or maybe trying to hold herself in place. Her boots were intact, no tearing, no missing laces. She hadn't tripped, she hadn't fallen far, but she had tried, however briefly, to resist something. A new lead came in through strange means. A retired wildlife photographer reached out to the sheriff's office after seeing the news. He said he'd been in that area during the same week Lena disappeared, tracking elk migration through the upper ridges. He hadn't seen her, but he remembered something else, a man, camped alone near a dried riverbed. He remembered it because the man hadn't responded when he said hello. Just stared at him, didn't wave, didn't nod, just watched until he passed. He'd written it off. Backcountry people were strange sometimes, but now, looking back, he wasn't so sure. They searched the area where the photographer said he'd seen the man. Nothing. No tarp, no fire ring, no remains of shelter. Whoever had been there was long gone. But 20 feet up a ridge, tucked behind a snow-covered boulder, they found something else. A piece of nylon fabric, frayed at the edge, deep green, mildew-stained. Not hiking gear, military surplus, part of a duffel or satchel. They bagged it, tested it. No DNA, just soil, mold, old pine, like it had been there a long time. And maybe it had, or maybe someone had come back for it, and just missed a piece. The question lingered like fog. Why move her back? No one had an answer that fit. Some said guilt. Maybe he hadn't meant for her to die. Maybe he'd found her later and tried to return her, but it felt too intentional. Lena hadn't just been moved, she'd been placed. Her body aligned with the lake's ridgeline, her head facing north. Even her arms, bent inward, gently crossed. It looked too deliberate, too calm, not staged, not messy, intentional. One investigator offer, Said a theory, half in a whisper. Sometimes people don't want to get away with something, they want it to be seen, found, understood. But what was there to understand? That Lena had crossed into someone's space? That she had seen something she shouldn't have? That she'd simply been the wrong person at the wrong time? None of it satisfied. And the man, if he existed, left behind nothing else. No name, no trail, no fingerprints, only a shadow, locked in a blurry frame, and a silence that wouldn't thaw. The search didn't stop after that. Even if the official case cooled again, even if law enforcement quietly shifted their focus elsewhere, Lena's sister didn't. Rachel returned to the mountain the following spring, walking the same trail her sister had taken, not to find evidence, not to understand what happened, but just to see it, to feel the air her sister had breathed. She carried a copy of Lena's journal, marked every entry on the trail map. When she reached the final one, the place Lena wrote, "It's beautiful here, like time holds its breath." She sat down and stayed until dusk. She said it was the first time since the funeral she felt anything other than rage. The snow had melted. The lake was open now, soft-edged, still. She stood on the shoreline and looked out across the water, eyes scanning the places where her sister's body had rested, unseen, for nearly 3 years. "I kept trying to imagine what it must have felt like to be that still," she told a podcast host later. Not scared, just still, as if even fear had frozen. People asked her if she believed someone did it, if she believed there really was a man out there. She always said the same thing. "I don't think, I know." What haunted her wasn't just the idea of what Lena saw. It was what Lena knew. There's a kind of panic that shows in people's writing, when the letters tilt or the spacing stretches out. Lena's journal didn't have that. It had precision. The line, "This doesn't feel right," wasn't written like a person unraveling. It was written like a person deciding something, like someone clocking a shift in the wind, like someone realizing they were no longer alone. There was no exclamation mark, no arrow, no underline, just a single plain sentence. Final, quiet, like an internal voice she'd finally chosen to believe. That subtle kind of knowing, the unspoken edge of dread, was something people kept circling back to. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse than that. It was quiet. When her last voice memo ended with a whisper, "Run," it wasn't followed by panic. There were no shouts, no breathless screams, just nothing. Almost like she didn't get the chance, or chose not to make a sound. Survival experts interviewed by the sheriff's office offered theories. Maybe she saw someone from far away and tried to move fast without being heard. Maybe she slipped while trying to hide. Maybe she thought if she kept quiet, she could avoid being noticed. One even said, "Some people freeze before they ever get cold. The body reacts, but the mind stalls." But none of that explained how she got from her final camp marker to the lake, without a single footprint, sign, or disturbance recorded. That winter had been mild. Snowfall was light. Tracking should have been possible. And yet, nothing. The trail cam near the lake hadn't captured her. No other hikers reported crossing paths with her. No satellite maps, taken over the region during routine ecological monitoring, had shown movement or human heat signatures in that area. For 3 years, it was as if Lena had evaporated, and then reappeared exactly where they thought they'd already looked. Rachel shared one final image during a memorial slideshow at the local library, a photo Lena had taken on a different trip the year before. In it, Lena stood with her back to the camera, facing a frozen lake at sunrise. The sun was just beginning to break through low fog, casting her silhouette in amber light. The caption beneath it read, "Not lost, just quiet." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. What made her case linger, what made people remember, wasn't gore or scandal. It was stillness. There was no villain caught, no weapon found, no arrest made, just a quiet stretch of forest, a frozen body beneath the ice, and a handful of fragments, images, voice memos, journal pages, that told the story without ever quite closing it. It felt like a thread still dangling in winter air. One of the deputies involved in the early search later admitted he kept the printed satellite photo on his desk for years, the one that showed the lake completely undisturbed just days before she was found. He said it reminded him that not all disappearances happen in chaos. Some happen in silence. Some are meant to. In the months that followed, the story faded, not from memory, but from headlines. People moved on, but some couldn't. One of the park volunteers, a man named Carl Mendez, found himself returning to the site every few weeks. He hadn't known Lena personally, just helped organize the first search party back in 2018, but something about it had stuck with him. "I kept thinking," he told a local paper, "we missed her, not just her body, her." He'd been the one to flag the sonar anomaly when the lake was scanned. He remembered sitting in the makeshift command trailer, watching grainy monitor feeds. When nothing turned up, they logged it as a false positive. Driftwood, probably. But now, he wasn't sure. He began hiking up again in the early mornings before work, not looking for anything, just walking. And one day, he noticed something strange. About 60 yards uphill from where Lena's final camp was believed to be, a tree stood partially scorched, blackened bark on one side, peeled away in long ribbons. It hadn't been like that before. He was sure of it. At first he thought lightning, but there were no strike patterns nearby, no branch damage above. Then he noticed what looked like deliberate cuts in the wood, vertical, even, too clean. Like someone had tried to peel it open, not just burn it. When he followed the pattern down the slope, he found more trees, not scorched but marked, faintly, with rough smudges, scratches, symbols, or maybe just confusion. Carl flagged it to the county. A ranger was sent up. Photos were taken. The official verdict? Animal damage. Probably bears. But Carl didn't buy it. Bears don't leave marks that even. He'd worked in forestry 12 years. He knew what natural damage looked like. This didn't feel natural. It felt like a message, or a path. Meanwhile, Rachel had been contacted by a filmmaker from a true crime docuseries. He wanted to do a full episode on Lena, possibly 2. He said it would bring attention to the case. Rachel declined. She's not content. Instead, she wrote an open letter and posted it to her personal blog. It wasn't long, but it said everything. To the person who saw her that night, "I don't need to know your name. I don't care what you were doing out there, but I know you saw her, and I know you moved her. Maybe you thought it was an act of mercy. Maybe it was something else. Either way, you didn't bury her. You placed her where she could be found." And she was. So maybe now you could let her rest, and let us go too. That post went semi-viral. Not national, but enough that local message boards lit up. People started sharing rumors, things they'd heard hikers say, strange men spotted near campgrounds, a cabin that had long since rotted away on the north face of the range. Most of it was noise, but one message stood out. It came from a woman named Elsie Thomas, who said she remembered Lena from that December. She hadn't been in the forest. She'd worked at a rural gas station 20 miles from the trailhead. She remembered Lena C., homing in early one morning, bought trail mix, hand warmers, and a gas canister. She remembered her because Lena had asked a question most travelers didn't. "Are there cameras on the access road?" Elsie had told her no. That stretch was too remote. Lena had just nodded. "Good," she'd said. "I'm trying to stay off-grid this time." That was it. But it changed something. Because up until then, everyone had assumed Lena was just drifting, wandering, casual. But that detail suggested something else. She hadn't stumbled into the woods without planning. She'd gone deliberately. She'd tried to leave no trail. She hadn't even told her best friend she was heading out that week. Just left a voicemail that said, "I'll check in after I'm back. Don't worry." And maybe she really had wanted solitude. Or maybe she was trying to lose someone. When authorities reviewed the traffic logs from nearby roads, they found an odd pattern. One car, a white 1990s sedan, had been captured by a wildlife camera several times that month near the same forest boundary, same make, same model, always at dawn, always headed north. The plates were too blurred to read. The car was never found. It wasn't conclusive, but it added weight to the idea that someone else had been circling that region. Someone quiet, someone practiced, someone watching. Rachel never visited the lake again. She said she didn't want her last memory of Lena to be a shadow beneath the ice. Instead, she held a small service in their hometown. Just close friends, some old teachers, and a few of Lena's hiking contacts. They lit candles, read her final journal entry aloud. And at the end, Rachel left the microphone and simply said, "She made it farther than any of us knew." No one spoke for a long time after that. In the corner of the room, one of Lena's photographs was displayed on a small easel. A snow-covered path disappearing into trees. No people, no caption, just stillness. It wasn't famous. It hadn't gone viral. But it had weight, like the air before snow. Or the kind of silence that feels full, not empty. Full of something waiting to be named. As the second winter after Lena's discovery approached, the lake froze over again. No one went back. The trail remained technically open, but hikers avoided it. Rangers noticed a drop in traffic. Even experienced backpackers stayed on the lower ridges. One of them left a note in the trail logbook that said simply, "Don't want to feel watched." The lake had become a kind of shadow. Not haunted, just wrong. Something about the air felt heavier there, as if the forest itself remembered her, not just the loss, but the way it happened and the way it lingered. The town, too, had changed in subtle ways. The gas station where Lena bought her last supplies replaced its overhead lights. The owner said he didn't want that cold glow anymore. The library donated a bench in her name, a small metal plaque inscribed with one of her favorite quotes, "The quietest people often carry the loudest storms." But the people who had known her didn't need a memorial. They carried it with them. Every time a solo woman checked in at the ranger station, every time a storm came in faster than expected, every time a family asked if the upper lake was safe, Rachel moved away. Not far, just out of state. She started working with a nonprofit that helped families track missing persons through wilderness terrain. Her experience, both personal and logistical, made her a natural guide. But she rarely talked about Lena anymore. One volunteer said she only mentioned her once. She said her sister's story wasn't about fear, it was about paying attention. That winter, something unexpected happened. A new ranger, a woman named Delia Hoft, was assigned to manage the region. She had no connection to Lena's case, hadn't worked the original disappearance, didn't know the volunteers, but say he had read every report. She'd grown up in a northern state, used to snow, used to isolation, and something about Lena's case never sat right with her. It wasn't the disappearance, she later told a reporter, it was the reappearance. She asked for permission to re-examine the records, not the body, not even the crime scene, just the weather. Delia went through the NOAA logs. She charted temperatures, frost rates, wind patterns, lake depth changes. Then she overlaid them with Lena's known timeline and the satellite footage the team had used to scan the ice over the years. And she noticed something. There was no break pattern, no disturbance beneath the surface, no shallow points that would explain a natural shift in ice or snow weight. If Lena's body had been beneath that lake the entire time, the ice would have cracked in 2020, or again in 2021. But it hadn't. And then, it had. As if someone had moved her there later. That's what made the case shift. Again. Because now, even the long-standing theory that she died early and the snow buried her started to fray. If she wasn't under the ice that whole time, then where was she? And why did someone return her? They searched the perimeter again. No signs, no new prints, no campfire rings. But behind the old ranger station, long unused, they found a hatch. Metal, rusted, locked with a weather-worn bolt. They'd walked past it dozens of times before, but when Delia opened it, a wave of frozen air hit her in the face. Inside, nothing but concrete. A storage chamber from decades earlier, probably for tools, but on the far wall, something had been etched into the paint. A crude drawing, a woman's silhouette, head tilted, arms folded, almost identical to how Lena had been found. It could have been nothing. Old graffiti, strange coincidence. But Delia didn't think so. The way the arms crossed, not symmetrical, but gentle, like they were meant to hold something, or someone. She took a photo, didn't report it officially, said it didn't feel like evidence, felt like a signal. From who? She had no idea, but it made her feel cold all over again. Somewhere around that time, the podcast world came calling again. This time, a high-production investigative show based in New York wanted to tell the story. Rachel didn't answer, but Carl Mendez did. He agreed to speak anonymously. He didn't want attention, just wanted people to know the silence of the woods wasn't always natural. There are places that don't want to be walked through, he said. Sometimes they let you in anyway. The episode aired in early March. It was called The Quiet Below, and one quote from it went viral. Maybe the lake didn't take her. Maybe it gave her back. That spring, Delia transferred out, said she needed a new assignment, somewhere flatter, warmer. She never confirmed anything, never made statements. But she did leave behind one note in the ranger cabin's logbook before she left. She wasn't alone out there. The question is, was she ever? No one knows who she meant. Lena? Rachel? Or something else entirely. The logbook page is still there. Someone laminated it, not as evidence, just as a reminder of what was found, of what was never explained, of the kind of story that doesn't end with an answer but with a pause, the kind that never quite leaves you, even when the snow melts, even when the lake is still, even when the trail is empty. 3 months after the lake thawed for the second time, someone left a single white flower near the ranger station's old wood sign. No note, no name, just the flower tucked into the gap between two boards, right above where Lena's name had once been scratched in chalk by a volunteer, long since erased by snow. They say it stayed there for almost a week, unmoving even in the wind. There's something strange about the way people remember her now. For a long time, Lena Merrill was a symbol of fear. Titties. "He girl who vanished alone," the cautionary tale whispered between hikers before winter. But then, something shifted. Maybe it was the voice notes, or the photo of her campfire, still burning after she'd gone. Or maybe it was that final unsent text found on her phone. "It's quieter here than I expected, but I think I like it." Whatever it was, people stopped talking about her as a mystery, and started talking about her as a presence. Stillness lingered in the places she walked. Not dread, not even sadness, just stillness, as if her memory filled the space she left. Rachel came back just once. It wasn't a big thing, no documentary crew, no ceremony. She just parked at the lower trailhead, waited until no one was around, and hiked 2 miles in. It wasn't even the right season. Everything was melting, muddy. The trail was half washed out in places. Patches of slush stuck to her boots. But she made it. She stood at the lake's edge, the same spot the ranger had stood when he'd first seen the dark shape under the ice. The surface was calm now. No wind, no sound but melting snow dripping from pine boughs above. She didn't cry. Not then. She just stood there, hands in her jacket pockets, and whispered something no one else could hear. Then she turned and walked back. There's a trail marker just before the lake, wooden, weathered, the words half faded. But someone carved new letters beneath the old ones, not with a knife but something sharper, less even, maybe a chisel, maybe a rock. Just 4 words. She made it through. No one knows who wrote it. Rangers remove it every spring. But it always comes back. There are still questions, of course. The photos found on her memory card. The last 5 were almost entirely black, but some were digitally enhanced. One showed something resembling a tree line, Another had what looked like the blurred outline of a figure behind snow. Not close, but not far, too blurred to be definitive, too clear to ignore. And then the final photo, the one that showed nothing at all. Just white. Blank, endless white. Not overexposed, just absence. Technicians said it was likely a camera glitch, a result of the cold, but some people think it was deliberate, that she pointed the camera at the sky or at the snow beneath her and clicked one last time to mark the silence or the end. The prescription bottle found in her bag was traced, a sleep aid, not strong, possibly expired. They don't know if she took any. The bottle was sealed. The key to her car was never found. The lockbox she used to store it, the one mounted under her bumper, was pried open, not cracked, not broken, just opened. Like someone knew how to do it. There was one final clue, buried deep in a digital folder of her cloud backups. A written note she'd started, dated 2 nights before her disappearance. Just a draft, no recipient. If something happens, don't let it be for nothing. I went up there because I needed the quiet. But if I don't come back, it's because I heard something in it. That was the last thing she ever wrote. The county never ruled it a homicide, never ruled it an accident either. It remains listed as unexplained exposure, 3 words that mean everything and nothing. Years later, a woman hiking in that same forest, a solo trip early winter, said she felt a strange sensation halfway up the trail, like someone walking beside her, matching her steps, saying nothing. When she turned, no one was there, but she stopped anyway, took a photo of the ridge, posted it online with the caption, "For Lena, you made it through, so will I." Some stories never get answers, not because the answers aren't there, but because the question was never about what happened. It was about why it stayed in the air, in the trees, in the pause between footsteps on frozen ground. Lena didn't vanish into a storm. She became part of the silence that came after. And even now, even years later, when the first snow falls and the trails go quiet again, you can almost hear it. Not her voice, not her scream, just breath, in, out. As if someone is still there, listening,